quiet way, so far as he dared to do, more than his own father. This is a very common case and a very natural one. It often happens that if the son is right, the father is wrong, and the father is not going to have this if he can help it. It was very hard, however, to say what was the true root of the mischief in the present case. It was not Ernest's having been imprisoned. Theobald forgot all about that much sooner than 9 fathers out of 10 would have done. Partly, no doubt, it was due to the incompatibility of temperament, but I believe the main ground of complaint lay in the fact that he had been so independent and so rich while still very young, and that thus the old gentleman had been robbed of his power to tease and scratch in the way he felt he was entitled to do. The love of teasing in a small way when he felt safe in doing so had remained part of his nature from the days when he told his nurse that he would keep her on purpose to torment her. I suppose it is so with all of us. At any rate, I am sure that most fathers, especially if they are clergymen, are like Theobald. He did not in reality, I am convinced, like Joey or Charlotte one whit better than he liked Ernest. He did not like anyone or anything, or if he liked anyone at all, it was his butler, who looked after him when he was not well, and took great care of him, and believed him to be the best and ablest man in the whole world. Whether this faithful and attached servant continued to think this after Theobald's will was opened, and it was found what kind of legacy had been left him, I know not. Of his children, the baby who had died at a day old was the only one whom he held to have treated him quite filially. As for Christina, he hardly ever pretended to miss her, and never mentioned her name, but this was taken as proof that he felt her loss too keenly to be able to ever speak of her. It may have been so, but I do not think it. Theobald's effects were sold by auction, and among them the Harmony of the Old and New Testaments which he had compiled during the many years with such exquisite neatness, and a huge collection of manuscript sermons, being all, in fact, that he had ever written. These and the Harmony fetched 9d. a barrow load. I was surprised to hear that Joey had not given the 3 or 4 shillings which would have bought the whole lot, but Ernest tells me that Joey was far fiercer in his dislike of his father than ever he had been himself, and wished to get rid of everything that reminded him of him. It has already appeared that both Joey and Charlotte are married. Joey has a family, but he and Ernest very rarely have any intercourse. Of course, Ernest took nothing under his father's will. This had long been understood, so that the other 2 are both well provided for. Charlotte is as clever as ever, and sometimes asks Ernest to come and stay with her and her husband near Dover, I suppose because she knows that the invitation will not be agreeable to him. There is a de haut en bas tone in all her letters. It is rather hard to lay one's finger upon it, but Ernest never gets a letter from her without feeling that he is being written to by one who has had direct communication with an angel. What an awful creature, he once said to me, that angel must have been if it had anything to do with making Charlotte what she is. Could you like, she wrote to him not long ago, the thoughts of a little sea change here? The top of the cliffs will soon be bright with heather. The gorse must be out already, and the heather I should think begun, to judge by the state of the hill at Ewell. And heather or no heather, the cliffs are always beautiful, and if you come your room shall be cosy so that you may have a resting corner to yourself. 19 6d. is the price of a return ticket which covers a month. Would you decide just as you would yourself like, only if you come we would hope to try and make it bright for you, but you must not feel it a burden on your mind if you feel disinclined to come in this direction. When I have a bad nightmare, Ernest said to me, laughing as he showed me this letter, I dream that I have got to stay with Charlotte. Her letters are supposed to be unusually well written, and I believe it is said among the family that Charlotte has far more real literary power than Ernest has. Sometimes we think that she is writing at him as much to say, "There now, don't you think you are the only one of us who can write? Read this. And if you want a telling bit of descriptive writing for your next book, you can make what use of it you like." I dare say she writes very well, but she has fallen under the dominion of the words hope, think, feel, try, bright, and little, and can hardly write a page without introducing all of these words, and some of them more than once. All this has the effect of making her style monotonous. Ernest is as fond of music as ever, perhaps more so, and of late years has added musical composition to the other irons in his fire. He finds it still a little difficult, and is in constant trouble through getting into the key of C sharp after beginning in the key of C, and being unable to get back again. Getting into the key of C sharp, he said, is like an unprotected female travelling on the Metropolitan Railway and finding herself at Shepherd's Bush, without quite knowing where she wants to go. How is she ever to get safe back to Clapham Junction? And Clapham Junction won't quite do either, for Clapham Junction is like the diminished seventh, susceptible of such enharmonic change that you can resolve it into all the possible termini of music. Talking of music reminds me of a little passage that took place between Ernest and Miss Skinner, Dr. Skinner's eldest daughter, not so very long ago. Dr. Skinner had long left Roughborough and had become dean of a cathedral in one of our Midland counties, a position which exactly suited him. Finding himself once in the neighbourhood, Ernest called, for old acquaintance' sake, and was hospitably entertained at lunch. 30 years had whitened the doctor's bushy eyebrows. His hair they could not whiten. I believe that but for that wig he would have been made a bishop. His voice and manner were unchanged, and when Ernest, remarking upon a plan of Rome which hung in the hall, spoke inadvertently of the Quirinal, he replied with all his wonted pomp, "Yes, the Quirinal, or as I myself prefer to call it, the Quirinal." After this triumph he inhaled a long breath through the corners of his mouth and flung it back again into the face of heaven as in his finest form during his head-mastership. At lunch he did indeed once say, "Next to impossible to think of anything else," but he immediately corrected himself and substituted the words, "next to impossible to entertain irrelevant ideas," after which he seemed to feel a good deal more comfortable. Ernest saw the familiar volumes of Dr. Skinner's works upon the bookshelves in the deanery dining-room, but he saw no copy of Rome or the Bible, which— "And are you still as fond of music as ever, Mr. Pontifex?" said Miss Skinner to Ernest during the course of the lunch. "Of some kinds of music, yes, Miss Skinner, but you know I never did like modern music." "Isn't that rather dreadful? Don't you think you rather—" She was going to have added, "ought to," but she left it unsaid, feeling doubtless that she had sufficiently conveyed her meaning. "I would like modern music if I could. I have been trying all my life to like it, but I succeed less and less the older I grow." "And pray where do you consider modern music to begin?" "With Sebastian Bach." "And don't you like Beethoven?" "No. I used to think I did when I was younger, but I know now that I never really liked him." "Ah, how can you say so? You cannot understand him. You never could say this if you understood him. For me a simple chord of Beethoven is enough. This is happiness." Ernest was amused at her strong family likeness to her father, a likeness which had grown upon her as she had become older, and which extended even to voice and manner of speaking. He remembered how he had heard me describe the game of chess I had played with the doctor in days gone by, and with his mind's ear seemed to hear